Good evening, everybody. My name is Rena. I use she, her pronouns. I am a public health student. I'm actually in my last term of, my undergrad degree. So this actually is the last project I have to do for my degree. So I'm pretty excited. So my mini topic is going over the toxic trio, chemical agents in nail salons, specifically formaldehyde as a component that is found in a lot of different chemicals and products that are used in the nail salon context. So first I'll go over kind of the gravity of the issue and kind of what drew me to the topic to begin with. So first is there's this connection as a consumer. So personally, I'm a consumer and avid user of a lot of different cosmetics and personal care products. And in that there has been this kind of like consciousness of, what's going in my body. And so that's kind of how I developed that awareness there. Also, nail salons have been a place for me to express, facet of my identity, my femme identity. It's also been kind of like a space of self-care, going out with my friends to get our nails done. It also serves as a bonding ritual too. So there is this like connection to this space and the people in those spaces as well. So with that said, the understanding the worker profile of those who are consistently exposed to formaldehyde and other chemicals. So in a study done by the UCLA Labor Center, workers in the industry are predominantly women at 81%. And a large population of them are also immigrants, largely Vietnamese, at 79%. Two-thirds of these individuals have at least one child, so a lot of parents here, where a third of them are head of the household. So if the family income is reliant on the work in these spaces, likely these workers are spending a lot of time, as I just said, but the rate of exposure becomes a little bit more chronic. So chronic exposure to these agents can yield some adverse health effects that I'll go over in just a second. And lastly, because of this worker profile, you might hear my cat meowing in the background. I do apologize, but as I was saying, this is an intersecting issue. So not only is this an environmental health issue, looking at these chemicals in these spaces, but it also becomes an occupational health issue more specifically. This is a place of, work and living for a lot of individuals. So folks' health, wellness, and rights and safety can be at jeopardy. It also encompasses immigrant health. So with that said, it becomes an issue of race and class, and we can have further discussions on who may be disproportionately exposed to these agents, specifically formaldehyde, which is a known carcinogen and very hazardous compound, especially when highly concentrated. So this is what drew me to the topic. Now, as for the background and more nitty gritty on the topic itself, I'll go over the toxic trio firstly, which in the industry, the toxic trio consists of formaldehyde, dibutyl phthalates, and toluene. And most of these are found in nail polishes and nail hardeners. So in nail salons, there are an array of services offered, manicures, pedicures. Some might even have like waxing and more other types of beauty services. But depending on the service, you're likely going to be exposed to a different combination of chemicals. For the purpose of this assignment, formaldehyde is the one that I'm focusing on, which is a highly reactive gas that serves a wide array of uses. It's often manufactured for resins, disinfectants, laboratory preservatives. If you've ever, dissected anything, you might be familiar with the smell. And formaldehyde solution, formalin, is considered a hazardous compound and a known carcinogen. Carcinogen. And as for sources and routes of exposure, folks are likely to be exposed to to formaldehyde through dermal absorption. It's obviously not going to be a highly concentrated amount, but it will be mixed, among the products. So through the skin is the most common route of exposure. Also, inhalation would probably be the secondary route of exposure. If you've ever stepped in a salon before, you might be familiar with the very strong and some would say potent kind of aroma that's in the air. It's all the chemicals going on. And though highly unlikely, ingestion could be a likely route of exposure. If folks are spending a lot of time in these spaces, likely, food can have maybe like traces of contamination, as I read in the study done by UCLA. But in regards to harmful exposure concentration, formaldehyde is extremely toxic. So in regards to the human skin and eye, as little as 4 parts per million will yield some type of harmful effect. Specifically, the health impact being mild to moderate skin irritation, as reported by a lot of workers. I also included the LD50 rate, specifically in the inhalation exposure in rats, a little over 1,000 milligrams per cubic meter. And the health impacts that were observed were lacrimation of the eye, so like the tearing of the eye, difficulty breathing, excuse me, changes in structure and the function of the salivary glands. Generally speaking, as you'll see in the left circle there, workers in nail salons generally report more acute symptoms, which would include headaches, as I mentioned, the skin irritation, and breathing problems. And some have even reported some neurocognitive symptoms, trouble thinking clearly, forgetfulness. It's inconclusive whether these are directly attributed to the space that they're in, but likely if you're spending a lot of time in these areas, the cause could definitely be the salon and the chemicals there. So, in regards to interventions, these are the additional resources I would love for you guys to read through. The first is the study I read through itself from the UCLA Labor Center. It's called Nail Files, which is the study that really does a great job of examining the overview of nail salon workers. It addresses the labor issues. It addresses the chemical agents that are in these spaces, and some kind of like harm reduction techniques into enforcing health and safety measures in order to, mitigate the exposure and like kind of lower the risk. For this one, I would like you guys to consider this as an environmental health issue, but also consider issues of justice and equity, specifically in the workforce context. And kind of as a result of this study, which is actually pretty fresh in November, is the California Healthy Nail Salon Collaborative. So this is a phenomenal example of community organizing. It includes a lot of harm reduction techniques specifically. So what this collaborative does is it gathers different nail salon owners from the California area, and they train them on different strategies to prevent exposure. And then in turn, those nail salon owners would then take that information to their staff. So strategies are personal, so wearing gloves and masks, which have demonstrated fewer of the health effects that I mentioned previously. And then there's more interpersonal things, so ensuring that coworkers are taking breaks and the team is, kind of supporting each other in that regard. And lastly, more systematic, like ample ventilation. And with this one, I would love for you to consider how this type of intervention is culturally responsive and really addressing how workers' identities shape their experiences, and discussing, how we're supporting people in these spaces, and in regards to public health, ethics, and practice, how we're ensuring the protection of all people's health. So with that said, I included my emails if you folks wanted to reach out. But yeah, happy reading and good luck on finals.